Hello everyone. I am live as I'm hoping I scheduled. Someone will correct me if I'm wrong. I think what I'm meant to be talking about today, having that moment where I'm going, am I doing the right thing? Yes, I am. We're going to be talking today about handling fear responses in your dog. And that could be a dog of any age, any breed, any size, any dog. Any dog can be fearful. So as you voted for in the Wagging Wonders Facebook group this week, we are going to be talking about how to handle fear responses. It's a really common theme at the minute. A lot of the dogs that I'm working with are quite nervous, they're quite anxious, and I'm also living the same life as a lot of you. My Whippet puppy is quite nervous, he's quite unsure, he lacks a lot of confidence. So handling fear responses is something that we are definitely dealing with every day. So let's start by talking about what is a fear response. As always, if you have any questions, you can comment. If you have any emoji reacts, you can. Arkle is here with me. He's managing to chill today, so fingers crossed it stays that way. I won't hit myself with an ostrich bone this time. It's the theme I'm going with. So what is a fear response? What am I talking about when I'm talking about handling fear responses? A fear response to me is, thank you, it never tells me who sends me those, but thank you. A dog who what is a fear response? Try again. Is a dog who reacts with panic to like a change in their environment, whether a sight or a sound, and they react. How they react might vary, their fear response might vary. They might quietly woof, you know, these really tiny little woofs under their breath. They may startle, like we would, physically panic. They may try and slip their harness, which is definitely something I'm used to with the Whippets. When they're nervous, they'll just try and like flight run. You know, there's a lot of ways that our dogs may respond in fear. A lot of the time, not a lot of the time, some of the time, sorry, our dogs might also show a fear response that seems to have come out of nowhere. And they are usually dogs who are trigger stacking. They're coping with things individually, but then like a third thing happens, or a fourth or fifth, you know, whatever number we're dealing with, and then it all comes out. So a fear response is our dog's like fight or flight response to something they're anxious about. And how they respond will vary dog to dog. So Arkle's fear response when he hears or sees something new is he tends to startle. Then he becomes hyper vigilant. So what he does is he watches everything. He really worries about things that he can't see. So he's actually much better if he can see like a dog barking at him than if he heard a dog barking at him and he couldn't locate it visually. I suppose it's being a slight hound. But he tends to become hyper vigilant, and then he kind of stops taking food, and that can be a fear response in itself. If he becomes like overwhelmed, he will try and pull me home. He will be in such a state of panic. You know, it's probably the equivalent of like a human panic attack. He'll be in such a state of panic, he just wants to go home. He doesn't want to deal with it anymore. He's scared. So, we've talked about what is a fear response. What should we do? And I think this is a really tricky one. You know, there's so much. I know I say it a lot. There is so much misinformation out there, and it makes it really difficult for us as owners because there is so much misinformation that maybe we're not being helped to help our dogs when they have a fear response. So, what should we do? We should try not to panic. It's one of those things where panic sort of spreads quite quickly. If my dog is panicking and I start to panic, then the panic is probably going to keep like rippling away because my dog can see I'm panicking, and that tells my dog this is a situation that I should probably be worried about, because not only am I panicking, but my human is panicking. So we want to ideally try not to panic, and I really get that's easier said than done if you have a dog who is startling in quite an abrupt way, and they're struggling quite a lot. But it's try and take deep breaths, try not to panic. even if you're panicking, like on the inside, you pretend you're absolutely fine to your dog, because they do pick up on stuff like that. So what do we want to do? We're not panicking. We want to perhaps reassure our dog that it's okay. And I'm sure you're all going, no, Zara, you're talking rubbish. We're not supposed to reassure our dogs because that's going to reinforce their fear. It doesn't. The really simple version is it doesn't. If we reassure our dogs when they're having a startle response or they are panicking, they're in an emotional state, they're having it's fight or flight. They are not bothered. They're not really like in a state of mind of thinking clearly. They're in a state of panic. If we reassure them, they're certainly not going to think, oh boy, it was good to be panicked. My owner gave me some fuss. And their dogs don't work like that. So we can reassure them because there's a good chance if we handle it, not always, but sometimes there's a good chance that if we handle it right, then our dogs are going to startle less. So what do I mean by reassure them? I think I should be a little bit clarifying on that, because I think there's a lot of ways we can reassure correctly and reassure and inadvertently make it a bit worse. So if my puppy, for example, is having a panic, he's watching me really carefully at the minute. I think I've got a treat in my hand. I'll probably just give him it. If he's having a panic and I were to suddenly it's okay, it's okay, it's okay. And you can almost can you feel the panic going through my voice as I do that rapid talking in this quite deep breath, because I'm a little bit panicked too, and I'm going, it's okay. He's actually looking at me going, it's not okay, is it? He's going, it's not okay. You're looking like you're hyperventilating a little bit more. What's going on? We're just sat in the room. So I'm probably not going to just repeat a mantra that is quite startling and quite high pitched. I'm going to make sure I'm not panicking. And I don't personally like the phrase it's okay, because I think often we unintentionally say it when it's absolutely not okay. And we kind of teach them that it's okay means, oh geez, it really isn't okay. I should probably be panicking right now. So I'm not going to just, panic myself. I'm not going to say something that's quite rapid. I'm not going to say the same thing over and over again. It's not going to be a sharp intake. I'm just going to, I sometimes, and people probably think I'm a bit mean, but it's not mean. I laugh quite a lot. What did Arkle do? He walked into a bin yesterday. I mean, he walks on his walks. He doesn't look where he's going. Some sight hound. He walked into a bin and he probably panicked about it. That bin just attacked me, Mum. I kind of just laughed. What are you doing? You daft puppy, it was a bin. And I talk in a very upbeat voice. I talk in a more lengthening my words. I'm very over the top, more singy-songy, TV presenter, kids TV presenter kind of thing. I don't like doing it. Please understand. I'm not saying it just for the fun of it, but it works because this upbeat, oh my goodness, what a silly puppy, what was that? You're being very silly, it was a bin, you walked into it, upbeat, a bit of fuss if my dog likes being petted, and we move on. Because A, he's just walked into a bin, it's really not a big deal. And B, most start responses are not a big deal. And we're saying, yes, I know it's something you were panicked about, but it's fine. I'm fine. And again, they pick up quite well that if you're fine, as long as we're not forcing them into anything, they're usually okay. Dogs are really good at reading us. I think I've said this before. Dogs are really, really good at reading us. So, especially puppies. Puppies really fall for this quite a lot. If you're just like, oh my goodness, what a silly puppy. What was that? Ba, 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 whatever you might say. You can honestly say whatever nonsense you like, as long as it's upbeat. That would be what I would do in the moment. I wouldn't over worry. If it's just like a quick startle, they're going to get over it. They're going to bounce back. I might reward them when they re-engage with me again and they sort of disengage from the panic, because I want them to learn that when they take a breath and carry on, it's a good thing. So I might do that. What else might I do? If my dog, I keep saying puppy because I live with one now, if my dog is continuing to panic, then I'm probably going to create distance between the thing that has startled them or caused them a fear response. I am probably going to create distance because my dog is telling me I'm not comfortable. I'm really struggling to cope. Behaviour is just information. I'm struggling to cope. What can you do? I don't want to force them into it, because if I force them to interact with something they're worried about, I'm going to make it worse in the long run. I'm going to make it into a problem, and I'm potentially also likely to ensure that they start to escalate their behaviours from a simple panic, like fear response, to like barking or growling. So I'm not going to force them to deal with the thing they've panicked about. If they are panicked, having a fear response, I'm going to create distance. I'm not going to tell my dog off for their response, even if that's, you know, a bit of barking, even if that's a bit of a growl, because it's just information. I don't want to punish the communication out of my dog, because I will regret it later. So I'm going to create distance. I'm using an upbeat voice the whole time, upbeat movements as well. Dogs are so amazing at watching the slight differences in the way we move. So I'm probably not going to tighten my lead unless I'm having a dog trying to slip like their lead or something. But even then, I'm probably just going to take them quite close to me and forego the lead, and probably just hold their harness or collar and then pick them up maybe and move them away, because tension tends to create more tension. So if my dog, you know, has a fear response, my dog's having a fear response, they get over it, perfect. My dog's having a fear response, we move away, they get over it, perfect. We can work on this later, right? But what happens if my dog's having a fear response and they don't stop having a fear response? So they're panicking and they continue to panic. You know, we've walked maybe a minute, even 2 minutes away from the thing they were fearful of, and they are still like, you know, pulling, scanning, unable to take food, unable to sort of engage with us. And this is something Arkle can do quite a lot when he's really panicked. What do? If my dog can't cope, they're telling me I'm having, you know, a massive panic, I don't know how to handle this, it's time to quit. It's time to retreat to a safer place. If I've got a small dog, no problem, pick them up if they're okay with being handled. Pick them up, carry them somewhere else. You can carry them maybe a few minutes away, pop them down on the floor. Can they cope any better? If they can, try scattering them some food and continue away from where the fear response was, or just continue your walk. If you can't pick up your dog, which applies to quite a lot of us, I think, then what can we do? If my dog's pulling constantly and he wants to go home, maybe I'm working on loose lead walking and I don't want him to pull. With Arkle, I have a system where if he's on his collar, it's time to train, and we're playing loose lead walking games. If he's on his harness, he has a little bit more leeway. If he's pulling in distress, he's having, you know, the equivalent of a panic attack, I am gonna let him pull home and, you know, deal with it that way. So I'm gonna clip him to his harness and go, we're just gonna go home. And I'm not gonna try and force him to engage with me. I'm not gonna try and force him to sit or pay attention or anything of the like, because he's having an emotional response. He's panicking, he's fearful, he's really highly distressed. What do? If I try and force him to deal with things, I'm likely going to make him more anxious, because he's learned he can't hugely trust me. He's saying to me, help, I'm having a panic attack, and if I stand there and say sit or watch me or anything like that, he's thinking, but I'm having a panic attack. It's like someone's asking you like maths questions when you're having a distressing moment in life. You're not going to trust that person that much in future. You said to them, I'm having this horrible experience, and they've gone, that's nice, but did you see the crossword in this week's newspaper? You're going to go, what the hell is wrong with you? What is wrong with you, right? You're going to think that. So I'm going to let my dog panic. And I'm going to go home and I'm going to think, right, how can we plan ahead? So how can we plan ahead for dogs with fear responses? We want to think about what does panic our dog? What kind of things panic your dog? Is it noises? Is it dogs? Is it people? Like what is it that panics your dog? Or is it even just the whole experience of being out? What is it that is panicking your dog? You have to find that out, because that's how you help your dog. Because then you can start to have calm and quiet walks for a little bit, maybe decompress, go on some of those freedom walks I've talked about, but also try and go out and work on building their confidence at distances they can handle with the things that they are a bit worried about. You need to get really good at watching your dog's body language. Dogs do give us loads of information. We don't always listen. Not intentionally, unintentionally. We don't always realise what our dogs are trying to tell us. So if my dog, you know, is suddenly looking, again, like with alcohol, hypervigilant, so that is looking around quite a lot. If my dog's suddenly sniffing the floor and he's not usually sniffy, if he's licking his lips quite abruptly, like over his nose, if he's yawning excessively, if he stops taking food, these are all signs that my dog is a little stressed. And it's giving me information that maybe they're not comfortable in their environment, or there is something in their environment they are uncomfortable about, if that makes sense. So we want to plan ahead, because planning ahead means we can take out rewards, we can take out the right equipment. You know, what are we walking our dogs in? We need to be safe as well. We need to be thinking about what is my dog safe in. If my dog is prone to slipping out of a harness or a collar, I need to really be careful about that, because I don't want my dog to slip their collar or harness and end up in a dire situation. So if I have a dog like that, I might want to get a double-ended lead, clip their collar to one clip their harness to the other. And what that's going to do is ensure with a lot of dogs, they can't get very far. However, for some dogs, that's not going to be enough. Some dogs are really good at slipping equipment. Whippets. So if I have a dog who, when they're panicked, tries to slip their equipment, I really, like I say, I don't want my dog to slip their equipment, because their harness, their collar, whatever it is, because they're likely going to put themselves in a very dangerous situation, and that's going to add to the stress. When I heard scary dog barking, I slipped my harness and I ran across a road and some people chased me. That's a really bad experience. So I'm going to get them a harness that has 3 straps. 3 straps? Yeah, there's a strap around their belly, basically. I've totally, lost the ability to count, apparently. Basically, I'm looking for an extra strap around their waist. I'm looking for a strap so that they cannot escape. So these are in the form of Roughwear Webmaster harnesses, Roughwear Flagline, Indie Dog harnesses, Houdini harnesses, Pets at Home do their own versions, 3 Peaks, and I think LD do their own version. All this means is that when fitted correctly, that extra strap means they can't escape. And that's really important, especially if you do have a sight hound who is spooky, or you have an ex-street dog who is quite nervous. They are incredibly good at slipping equipment. You don't want it to happen, because these are both kind of dogs who can run far, fast, and may struggle to be captured once they get into a flight state of mind. So we want to plan ahead with equipment. We want to think, how can I set this experience up positively? I love using a long line wherever humanely possible. I will use one in as many places as possible, in all seriousness. I felt it helped hugely with Arkle on a walk yesterday. We were on a big playing field, and then we went to some paths just off it, that they're paths, but they're quite wide with loads of grass. He went on his long line there. He was so happy. New place. He wasn't bothered. Freedom creates confidence in a lot of cases. So if you can't trust your dog off the lead because they are a flight risk, and again, if your dog is a flight risk in that they panic when something bad happens, they should be on a long line so they can't run. Marley, up there, he's very good, I say good, when he's panicked at just running home for his life. Not ideal where I live, there's lots of big roads. So these days Marley tends to be on a long line, because I don't want that to happen. So long lines are good, Houdini harnesses are good. What else can I be doing with a fear response, planning ahead? I want to almost sometimes, as odd as it sounds, practice what I would do. Like I said, walking into a bin is probably not a real fear response, but I like to do the whole, oh dear, it's just a bin, because then that builds a little, it builds a habit with me of what I should be doing. Sometimes as humans, we tend to think it's all about training the dogs, and a lot of the time, there's a lot of us training that needs to go on. I know that, I'm rubbish at following my own advice sometimes. And sometimes when our dog's panicking, we can go into fight or flight. We're like, oh my God, what do I do? I'm really panicked. Whereas if we've practiced our little happy routine of, oh gosh, what a silly dog, what a silly puppy, it was just a bird. Or pigeons flying out of trees. They scare Arkle a lot. So we do it a lot then. We do it a lot of minor things, because then when it is something really scary, we both know what to do. We both know how to handle it. It isn't something where I'm thinking, what should I be doing? How do I handle this? I'm panicking. No, It's there. It's there in muscle memory. It's there with both of us, if that makes sense. And I know it sounds odd, but I do a lot of things for when I need them, when I don't need them, because I always want to train for the situation and not in it. I've talked a bit about safety already. I've kind of been talking about safety. Safety and planning ahead, I feel, are two of the same. But yeah, be safe. Be sensible. If your puppy is... Oh, sorry, I keep saying puppy. If your dog is a nervous dog and they keep telling you they're nervous and they keep panicking in the same situations, I think the best phrase to sort of use is repeating the same thing over and over again, knowing that the results aren't going to change. I'm pretty sure this is the right phrase, is the definition of insanity. Like doing the same thing over and over and expecting a different outcome is futile, I think is a better word. So you know your dog can't handle this situation, they're likely to panic, stop going in that situation for now. Because if you keep going into that situation and they keep rehearsing a fear response, a panic response, a startle response, whatever it might be, that's going to start to become more of a normal response for them, if that makes sense. Practice makes perfect. If they encounter things that cause them to panic a lot, they're going to be more likely to panic a lot. If they encounter things they can cope with, at the pace they can cope with, then they're going to be less likely to panic, if that makes sense. So, I think I've covered all my notes, which is rather shocking, because this is like one of the first times I've talked and not gone over my allotted time slot. I usually try and do these in 30 minutes, and I've actually, 21 minutes in, nearly finished my pre-written notes. So, if anyone has any questions, you can tap. That's a tapping motion, by the way. I don't know why my hands are so weird. You can tap and type a comment. You can type a comment. I'll recap what I've just been saying. I'm going to ask anything on fear responses. Honestly, I love questions. I love questions. Please ask me questions. I love questions. So we've been talking about fear responses. What is a fear response? This is a dog who reacts with panic to a certain situation or a new situation. They might woof, they might grumble, they might try and slip the harnesses, they might startle. Not all dogs who are experiencing a fear response will look the same. What should we do? We shouldn't panic, we should take a breath ourselves. We should try and reassure our dogs in a positive, upbeat manner, being as happy as we can. We can't reinforce fear. We can't. I'm going to share some links in a few places on that as well, because I think that's something that still goes about quite a lot. If our dog is in distress, we just quit and leave it there for now. And we sort of reassess. We want to make sure that we're planning ahead. We want to be thinking, what situations can my dog cope with? What situations doesn't my dog cope with? How can I help them handle the situation they struggled with better in future? A lot of the time this is confidence building. You're going to see this a lot on my page as a theme at the minute. It's everyone's dog seems to be, or at least all of you who are contacting me tend to have nervous dogs. And again, I'm living that life. So lots of confidence building with dogs who have regular fear responses. We want to be safe. So we want to be having our dogs on appropriate equipment for how they respond to things. If we're talking when your dog has a fear response, they're redirecting aggression, or they're being aggressive, they should be muzzled in a positive muzzle training. That's definitely a valid fear response. I suppose I haven't mentioned there that some dogs will just grab and bite when startled. Oh, my Jack Russell used to do this. If we were walking past someone's garden and a dog's head came out of the garden, because that would happen more often than you would think. He didn't think his fear response was snap and bite. That's not not ideal. Trust me, it didn't actually happen in those contexts, but we knew he was a bit of a risk, so he wore a muzzle, because that is a risky fear response. And I don't want that rehearsing, so he wore a muzzle. He was happily muzzle trained. Muzzles are not a bad thing, don't think they are. He loved his muzzle. It meant he could go on exciting walks where he might not be able to go on otherwise. So that's another fear response to consider with being safe. But you might want to consider a Houdini harness with an extra strap, or using a long line in a situation where your dog might be likely to react out of flight. So, and the only other thing I mentioned here, I can check my own notes as well, is I would use a long line, but not a retractable flexi lead. I do not use flexi leads or recommend them in any situation pretty much. I'm sorry, because particularly with dogs who have fear responses, if you drop that flexi, that retractable lead, whatever we're calling it, our dog is going to run off in panic because it's going to follow behind them, thudding all the way behind. It's not good. And it also creates constant tension. Constant tension creates more tension, it creates more anxiety. We want to be using a long line. A long line is just a really long lead placed along the floor. If you've seen any of my posts recently, most of the dogs I'm working with are on a long line. I know they're a pain, but they're really helpful. They're really helpful. And once you get used to them, they're not a pain. So I think that is everything I have to say on fear responses, handling fear responses. If you have any questions, you can give me an email. I am, as I say, working with primarily fear response cases at the moment. I'm loving it. I'm loving all your updates. I've got quite a few of you sending me videos and photos, and I love to see them. It is wonderful to see you doing your homework with your dogs and the difference it is making. I'm probably going to do a little update post on quite a few of your dogs soon. But otherwise, I think if that's it and no one has any questions, I'm going to let you all go. I have one more live this week that is not on this page. It is on the Whippet Wonders page. Probably won't be applicable to many of you because it's adding another Whippet into your home that might already have a Whippet. You might have multi-Whippets. As I've said before, this is my 4th Whippet in the home, so I have much to talk about on that, but that's tomorrow on the Whippet Wonders page at, I think, 6 p.m. again. I think 6 p.m. is the theme. Otherwise, I'm going to go, guys. Thank you for watching. If you have any questions, let me know. Thanks for joining. Bye!